Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm one of your co-hosts for the group for the Sam and Sam show, Sam McGinnis. I always do that for some reason, and we got our other co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Sam. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. For some reason, I always do that, but we're gonna give you a little breakdown of the show today, and then get right to it. We're gonna start with some QB grades from A+ to F for about 13 of the QBs in the NFL. Then we'll go into NFL news. Then we'll go to our NHL predictions, still looking at some of the new division possibilities, along with a new potential NHL start date, some NBA news, and then we'll finish it off with thinking or dreaming, and maybe some college football if we've got any in there.
I don't think so. Not too much college football news, honestly. It's been pretty much the same thing the past couple of weeks at this point. We're kind of settled into a point where it's the same top four teams, so not much to talk about for that. But we certainly have a lot to talk about these quarterback rankings. So we want to kick it off here? We want to start off with our first guy?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hit.
All right, so first up, we have Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, he's been interesting. He's what I would call serviceable. He is acceptable at the quarterback position, but I don't really think you can say much more than that about him.
You know what? I'll say this. His rookie year, he set a record for passing touchdowns by rookie with 27. I thought he was going to be phenomenal. When he was entering the draft, I thought he was going to be one of, if not the best quarterbacks from the draft. I thought he was going to be like number 2 behind Sam Darnold, in my opinion. And obviously, both those haven't worked out too well so far. And he's just been really disappointing. I mean, this year, his numbers are there, but really, if you watch him play, he plays like a lot lower than his numbers show. 2,180 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, a 92.3 passer rating. He plays worse than those numbers show, so I have a pretty low grade for him.
Yeah, it's again, for me, this is like the lowest grade of acceptable you can have, or just it's serviceable is what it is. Like, your backup won't be better than this, or at least in the modern day NFL, you might, because backup quarterbacks can actually throw the ball now. But yeah, he's serviceable.
So what grade do you give Baker Mayfield right now?
I think I'm gonna have to give it a C+. He's not doing great.
I'm going to go lower than you. I'm going to give him a D. I think his numbers look pretty good this year. His numbers are not horrible, as I said, but he's playing a lot worse than they are. And then you look at what Jackie did against Jacksonville. I mean, he threw for 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, but he looked awful during that game. So to me, Baker Mayfield, he's got the numbers this year. I'm still giving him a D because I had so high expectations for him coming out of college, and he has not lived up to them whatsoever. So I am going to give Baker Mayfield a D. I'm going to be pretty stingy throughout the show, but you know what? I think that's the best way to grade these quarterbacks.
Yeah. Sam was talking to me earlier before we started the show. He said he was that teacher that's really hard on all the students, and then they're all mad at him and nobody likes him.
Well, yeah, but you know what? Nobody likes me anyways. It's not going to make a huge impact on that.
Yeah.
It's not going to affect my net popularity, so I'll be okay with it.
All right. But let's move on to Tom Brady then.
Yeah, and Tom Brady's going to be an interesting discussion, I assume. So I think we have a similar grade on him so far this year, but is he really meeting expectations? I mean, there were sky-high expectations for him joining Tampa Bay, and now it feels like he's just not performing up to the level that people were hoping he would. I understand that we have unrealistic expectations for Brady because we expect so much from him, but at the same point, I mean, he doesn't look comfortable in that offense.
Yeah, here's my thing. Whether he's comfortable or not, I think there is too much criticism put on him, at least from some websites I've seen. Some of the articles I've seen is ridiculous, kind of making it seem like it's a catastrophe in Tampa Bay. It's not. It's really not. He's throwing more, and yeah, he's throwing more interceptions, but if you actually look at the numbers, he's doing pretty good. So I wouldn't bang on him too much. And honestly, he does deserve a pretty good ranking. It's not like he's doing poorly. He's a top 10 quarterback right now.
Yeah, people who are holding this idea that Tom Brady, oh, he's done. This is the end of Tom Brady. Like, just chill for a minute. Sit back and look at his numbers. Right now, Tom Brady playing in a new system with Bruce Arians. By the way, quarterbacks who play in their first years with Bruce Arians almost always throw ridiculous numbers of interceptions. I mean, multiple guys. We're talking about Carson Palmer, Andrew Luck, Jameis Winston. Ben Roethlisberger had 11 interceptions in his first year playing with Bruce Arians. So it's a situation where you have a lot of interceptions, and Tom Brady is leading the NFL in pass attempts and pass completions. So of course you're going to have a large number of interceptions when you do something like that. Right now he's got 3,300 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Most quarterbacks would kill to have those numbers. So you and I both agree he deserves a high rating. And we reached an agreement. An A- is about right for Tom Brady.
Yeah, it's not phenomenal, but it's still really great play.
Yeah, like I said, most quarterbacks never get to that kind of level where they're going to be able to throw for 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions in just 12 weeks, mind you. He's going to get close to 40 touchdowns this year. So even if he ends up with,
that's pretty insane.
Yeah, even if he ends up with, say, 16 interceptions, I really don't care because he's got 40 touchdowns. That's still a huge net gain over Jameis Winston and what you were getting out of him last year.
So let me ask you a quick question then. I believe there was a year Matthew Stafford threw 41 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. Is that about the same level of play you're talking about then?
Hold on, I need to confirm this. I need to confirm that these numbers are accurate. He did have 41 touchdowns and 16 interceptions in 2011. Somehow didn't make the Pro Bowl, which to me was ridiculous. That was his 5,000-yard season when he threw for the most. We had the most pass attempts in the league. Stafford should have been a Pro Bowler that year, by the way. He should have been a top 10 quarterback that year. I'm not doubting you there. That was a major Pro Bowl snub there. Based on his production, he should have been that level. But you know what? That was probably the best year of Stafford's career. And Tom Brady looks like he's going to hit that. And he's, 43, 44 years old? So, I mean, really, for Tom Brady, it's a pretty big accomplishment.
It's very nicely done. I believe he's on his way for most completions in his career, if I'm not mistaken.
I would think so because he really doesn't usually lead the NFL in pass attempts. He's got 307 completions right now. His career high, I'm looking at it, is 402. So, yeah, he will get there by the end of this year, assuming he stays healthy.
Yeah, more pass attempts usually mean more pass completions for guys like Tom Brady. But let's move on to our next guy. We got Ryan Tannehill up next.
Yeah, and Tannehill's a guy I'm high on. If you ever see my quarterback power rankings, which I do pretty much, I do every week, if you've ever seen them, you know that I really like Ryan Tannehill. And hang on, I'm trying to pull his picture up right now. The thing is, they're really small on the screen, so I actually don't know which one is Ryan Tannehill. There it is. All right, I was trying to see which one. There's a lot of blue uniforms, so I was trying to tell which one's Ryan Tannehill. But if you've read my quarterback power rankings, you would know that I really appreciate what Ryan Tannehill has done the past 2 years. He doesn't have to drive the engine in Tennessee because they have Derrick Henry there. But really, Tannehill is a great, efficient quarterback. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL easily. He's got 2,608 passing yards this year, 23 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, a 106.7 passer rating. To me, Ryan Tannehill is a top 10, if not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now.
Well, and it's a great story, too, because going from Miami and then being able to go to Tennessee, and everybody thought it was kind of a one-year wonder kind of a thing. He's proving everybody wrong, and it's really nice for him. And just for a person that's a Lions fan, I understand when your team sucks, you kind of want great players to be able to go and succeed somewhere else.
Yeah, and he's gone from Miami to Tennessee, and he's really revived his career. That being said, what grade do you give him?
I think you went a little too high with yours when I was running through it. I'd give him an A.
You know, I give him an A+, which is probably too high. He probably really deserves an A. But I think he gets so much, not hate. He gets discredited to some degree. He never gets the attention he deserves. So I went a little bit high to kind of compensate for that and gave him an A+. Probably an A would be more reasonable. But I don't think he's undeserving of that A+ all the same.
He has had a great year so far, and hopefully he's able to finish it off just the same.
Yeah, he's had a great 2-year run pretty much with Tennessee at this point. But that brings us to a guy who's not really having a great run right now. And we'll have a lot to say about this guy. We've got Carson Wentz coming up next.
Oh, yeah.
And oh boy, has it been a season for Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles.
I really wonder how much of it is him trying to overcompensate for the lack of anything around him. And how much of it is him just trying to do too much. And if he just calmed down and just didn't try to push himself to the absolute limit, if he would actually end up doing better in the end.
Yeah, I think he would too. Here's the issue, though. There are multiple failures here. The general manager for the Philadelphia Eagles, Howie Roseman, drafted a receiver last year named J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. In his career, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside has fewer yards, touchdowns, and receptions than DK Metcalf, who was drafted after him, has in the past 3 weeks. So they missed on DK Metcalf. They did not take him. Then they drafted Jalen Reagor, wide receiver from TCU this year, instead of taking Justin Jefferson, who, by the way, is going to be a Pro Bowler and is one of the best rookie receivers we've seen in the past decade. So there have been failures to put weapons around him because they have not drafted well. Doug Peterson, he's been a terrible play caller this year. I think he's finally turning over play calling duties to someone else. But he's been absolutely god-awful this year at calling plays. And he's put Carson Wentz in positions to fail. And meanwhile, Carson Wentz keeps playing hero ball, which is leading to all these excessive turnovers.
Well, yeah, and as we mentioned, you said he's in his own head as well. I mean, he's most sacked in the NFL right now. Part of that is injuries on the O-line, I would imagine. But he also has an excessive number of turnovers. Interceptions, I think, are at 15. He's thrown, 16 touchdowns? And this isn't even including the fumbles he's had. So
yeah,
this is just ridiculous. Hopefully, for his sake and for his career's sake, this is a one-year deal. But at the only thing that could make this worse for him is getting injured again. Because then I would be concerned for him about, where are you going to get your next – what's the starting job situation going to be at that point?
Well, if you were worried about durability, I think this year would kind of put you over the top, right? Because he's taking so many hits. You've got to say at this point, you got to get rid of the injury concerns to some degree because he's proven he's a little durable here by taking all of these hits and still surviving. So,
but if you get injured again, that's literally every season of your career you've been injured. It would just be unfortunate for him and may not help him out if he got injured yet again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously you want to avoid injury at all costs, but you were right. His numbers are bad this year. He's completing less than 60% of his pass attempts, which to me is the bare minimum for a starting quarterback in the NFL that I would want. 2,541 yards, 16 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, a league high, 46 sacks, only a 73.4 passer rating. This is after a year where he led the undermanned Philadelphia Eagles to the playoffs. And really, I feel bad for Carson Wentz. I had him as a top 10 quarterback going into the year. And now, both of us agreed, he gets a D.
Yeah, and it may even be a little generous to give him a D. But again, you have to take everything into account, the O-line injuries, the awful play calling, the having literally nothing to work with. I mean, are you really blaming him for trying to play hero ball? Because what else is he supposed to do, right? So
yeah, Carson Wentz is not the principal problem here. There are other people around him who have failed him first. They're higher up the chain of command. Those are the issues. I think Carson Wentz is part of the problem, certainly, but he's not the main issue.
Yeah, I will say even at his prime, I will say that he was a little overrated, but he isn't this bad.
How can you be overrated when you take a team with the top receiver, that's Greg Ward, to the playoffs and put up a fight against Seattle? To me, you can't say Carson Wentz was overrated based on what he did last year. And even what he did, I mean, he was an MVP candidate in 2017. He would have won the MVP if he didn't get hurt late in the season. In 2018, this was a guy coming off a serious injury. He almost completed 70% of his pass attempts, 21 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. He has 2 years of his career with a passer rating over 100. I think top 10 is fairly reasonable for this guy during the best years of his career.
If you're taking the best years, potentially. But even with that being a gut thing for me, because not everything can just be brought from statistics, I think. I think Nick Foles worked better with the system just when he played with them. But at the same time, he's not D bad on a normal basis. Even if he was exposed for exactly what he is, he'd still be at least maybe a decent quarterback.
Yeah, I think Nick Foles worked so well with Philadelphia. They still had Frank Wright, who's the current head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. At the time, Frank Wright was in Philadelphia as the offensive coordinator. Since he left, Doug Pearson's been calling the plays. And as I said earlier, Doug Pearson is part of the problem in Philadelphia. But I think that's enough talking, enough bashing Carson Wentz and the Eagles right now.
That's enough bashing Carson Wentz. Yeah, we've been on.
We'll move on here. We'll take some new perspective and we'll talk about Philip Rivers. Now, Philip Rivers is a bit of a controversial quarterback as well. Going to Indianapolis is his first year with the Colts after spending the rest of his career with the Chargers. He's an aging quarterback. People thought he was on the decline, but he's kind of really pulled it back here in the maybe the past 6 or 7 weeks.
He's interesting to me. It feels like he's doing something, but he's aging is what it feels like. Is that you can see the aging on him big time. It's a little concerning. It just is. You can see the aging. You can see him slowing down. I just don't completely trust him. I see him more as conservative than anything else. But yeah, it's not that he's doing bad. There's just some concern in the back of my mind, you know?
No, I fully agree with you. I think he's slowing down as well. And he doesn't have the arm strength he used to. He looks like he's a little bit labored when he's trying to throw the ball. Looks like it's hurting him a little bit. However, he's completing 67% of his pass attempts in an offense that has no Pro Bowl wide receivers right now.
See that?
16 touchdowns, almost 3,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. That's not a great ratio, but most of those interceptions came in the first maybe 5 weeks of the year, and since then he's been fairly clean. So to me, Philip Rivers, I think he's worthy of roughly a B. What about you?
So for me, I think I'm going to associate a little bit with Drew Brees here. You mentioned the completion percentage was pretty good. And you see, that's what you got to do. When you start not being able to throw as far or do as well, you got to be able to be more efficient with what you can get. But I think for me, when it comes down to Philip Rivers, I got to give him a B also. I think it's pretty deserving.
All right, well, I have it down as B+ because that's what you originally wrote, and you've changed your answer since then, which was like 2 hours ago. So it says B+, but I'll get we'll note it down. You said B instead, so we both had B's of Philip Rivers, which I think is fair. I think it's fair. I mean, he's playing fairly well with the Colts right now. They're in playoff position. He's not going to be a great quarterback. He's not going to go out there and win you a tough game, but I think he's enough to help you win 10 games this year and get into the playoffs, which I think is deserving of a B for Philip Rivers.
Yeah, good but not great, I think sums up Philip Rivers pretty well.
Yeah, and we want to talk about a quarterback who a lot of people view as good but not great, and I would sometimes disagree with them. We're going to talk about Derek Carr next. Derek Carr is a very controversial quarterback because he doesn't have the numbers that a lot of stars do, but I still think he's a very good player.
Why is this a question? Also, if I'm not mistaken, he also has the numbers now. So I'm kind of missing this, you know? They almost beat Kansas City twice. He has torched that defense twice. He's done well all year, minus maybe a few games, but he's done pretty outstanding. I think he's deserving of a much better grade than some people would give him.
Yeah, and this guy's completing 69.3% of his passes this year, 2,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I think the issue people hang their hats on sometimes is he's only throwing for like 240 yards a game. They tend to like the guys who are throwing for more like 260 to 280, something like that. But he's got 104.9 passer rating. That's a career high this season. Derek Carr has never been a bad quarterback, regardless of what everyone or anyone has told you. Derek Carr, just because he never developed into an MVP caliber quarterback that some people thought he might after 2016, he's still a very good quarterback. And for me, he deserves a high grade. I'm giving him an A-.
Yeah, I think he's definitely deserving of a high A kind of grade. But if I'm looking back at mine, I was thinking actually A.
So you were going to give him a higher grade than I was. That's a little bit surprising. I'm usually very positive for Derek Carr, but you even outdone me here.
Yeah, here's the thing. Derek Carr and your NFL partner there and Good Pastor will tell you this too. Derek Carr is one heck of a quarterback, but he's really underrated. And I think part of this may be, correct me if I'm wrong, but may just be because of the lack of wins in recent years. And I think that's really partially a poor way to grade a quarterback, because you can be in a very bad situation. Look at Gardner Minshew. He's still done well, at least in prior year, and he's just got nothing. So you got to give a quarterback credit for where they're at and what's going on. And this year he's blowing it out of the water. Yeah,
he's certainly setting a new tone and pace this year, and probably rewriting some of the people who have wrote him off over the years. So he's probably changing their minds right now. But speaking of a quarterback who's not having a good year, Lamar Jackson has really struggled this season after winning the MVP last year. We were thinking about him being the top 3 quarterback moving forward, a generational type talent. And now suddenly, it looks pretty pedestrian out there. I know he's still running for a decent amount of yards. He's got maybe 500 or so this year, maybe 600. But really, the passing has not been there.
Yeah, and I think this might be part of the problem. They've tried to turn him into a little bit more of a pocket passer than he is. Here's the thing. Do what works until it stops working. I don't know why you thought you needed to change what was going on there in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, but if you let him be himself, he might do better than he is right now.
Yeah, I think they need to leave Lamar alone. They clearly are trying to alter him a little bit. The play calling has not helped whatsoever. So he's gone from completing 66% of his passes last year for 36 touchdowns and 6 interceptions to completing only 63 this year. He's got 15 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So he's basically already equaled his 12 interceptions from last year to this year, and he's only played 10 games so far. And he's throwing for fewer than 200 yards per game this season. He does not look good. He does not look clean. Last year, I felt like it was hard for people to tackle him. People were missing him left and right. He ran for 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. I mean, he's averaging almost 23, 25 fewer rushing yards per game this season. He doesn't look comfortable to me. I'm giving him a C because he does not look good. And when he's not able to run and move outside the pocket like he wants to, his throws are really off target. I think he just deserves a C this year.
I'm giving him a C plus, but I would also say that just let him be himself. Let him be himself. Let him run the ball. Let him do his fun jukes and stuff. Just don't break what's not broken. Don't fix what's not broken.
Yeah, sometimes you overthink it, right? As an NFL head coach or a coordinator, you might overthink it too much. I think that's what's going on with Lamar Jackson. To me, I know Mike is not a big fan of Lamar. He really isn't. But I like Lamar still. I still think Lamar could be a top 10 quarterback. I just think we need to let Lamar work with what he's comfortable doing. Because, I mean, that's what they did with Michael Vick. Michael Vick was allowed to do whatever he wanted sometimes within the offense. He was allowed to ad lib at times during plays because Michael Vick had the athletic ability to pull that off. So does Lamar. You just have to let him go and stop basically chinning him down inside the pocket. Call plays that will maximize his athletic ability and just, let him develop over time. Don't force it on him too early.
Yeah, it is scary right now. I watched part of one of those Bengals games where he should have probably thrown 1 to 2 more picks than he did. He threw one that literally hit the defender's chest, and I'm like, you're playing the Bengals. What is wrong with you?
You can't be throwing interceptions against the Bengals. That's just really bad. That's very telling of your football team and the state of your team. But speaking of the state of a team, the quarterback for the New York Jets, Sam Darnold. This is a really interesting one. And not in a good way. I mean, Sam Darnold to me was the best quarterback coming out of that draft class of Baker Mayfield. I like him and Mayfield quite a bit. I thought Mayfield was underrated. I thought Darnold was going to be a future star, though, for sure. I had him pinned to some guy who was going to go out there and be a Pro Bowl caliber player. Not like a Hall of Fame type guy, not a generational type talent, but still like a low Pro Bowl caliber player. And it is not worked out whatsoever in New York.
It's time to move on from Sam Darnold and draft a new QB. Listen, he just doesn't work. He just doesn't. Even with the talent he has, I know he's doing garbage, and part of that is because of the situation he is in. But even a good quarterback can do at least something in a bad situation. Sam Darnold can't even say that. So for me, it is time to move on from Sam Darnold. Maybe he can be a backup or third string somewhere, but he's definitely not a first string in my mind.
I think he could be a first stringer somewhere. I think if you put him in Indianapolis or in Chicago, I think he performs much better. I think he's a good starting quarterback if you put him in either of those spots. He's been permanently damaged by Adam Gase to some degree. I don't think he'll ever be a Pro Bowl caliber player, but I think he could still be a starter. But for this year, we're just grading based on this year right now. I have to give him the lowest possible grade. I'm giving Sam Darnold an F. I mean, it's pretty simple for me too. This guy, he's dealt with injuries, by the way, throughout his career, so you can't say he's never been able to get on a roll really. But he's completing fewer than 60% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That's just horrendous. To me, the Jets will definitely move on this year and draft Trevor Lawrence. But Sam Darnold, you get an F from me.
You get a D- from me, maybe F. He's done pretty atrociously.
Yeah, and it's not all his fault to be quite clear. The coaching there is terrible. The supporting cast around him is questionable at best.
Adam Gase. That's all you got to say. Just walk away.
Worst head coach in the NFL right now. Especially now that Matt Patricia's fired. But
yeah, and thank goodness. I just hope that Matthew Stafford actually gets traded next year to a good team. If my ideal situation would be if Drew Brees actually retires at the end of the year, the Lions trade him to the Saints because he's a good enough quarterback that he could make something out of that. And unless Jameis Winston can turn his career around there or something, they really don't have a legitimate next starter for the Saints right now.
What do you mean? They say on Taysom Hill a 2-year deal, and Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill. So are you saying you're not buying into what Sean Payton's selling you, Sam?
If anybody thinks Taysom Hill is a starting QB, here's what I have to say. He has thrown 1 interception, no touchdowns in his games. He had a poor game against the Broncos. Okay. This is not a starting QB. He is serviceable, kind of like Nick Foles was for the Eagles for the time that he's needed for, but he is not a starting QB.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And speaking of a serviceable quarterback, who do we have next? It's going to be Josh Allen. Josh Allen,
that's more than serviceable.
Yeah, that's more than serviceable. He's a very good quarterback right now. And Josh Allen was a guy who I thought was going to be out of the league in maybe 5 or 6 years after last season because Josh Allen did not look good to me whatsoever last year. I've been a huge Josh Allen doubter the entire way, and I will fully admit that I was wrong because he came out and he's playing really well this year. We'll see how he does in future seasons, though. I'm not totally backing down off at this point. But he looked very bad in his first 2 years. He's really turned it around in year 3. He's got the Bills in charge of their division. He's got passer rating over 100. Josh Allen looks like an A quarterback to me right now.
Yeah, and he'll help lead his team to more division titles if the Patriots don't get back on it. I don't think Miami, unless they figure it out with Tua. Yeah, think about how weird this is. You could potentially have a situation in which Buffalo and Miami are competing for the division year over year if Belichick moves somewhere else.
I don't think Belichick will move somewhere else, but I do think it's very strange to talk about Buffalo and Miami competing for the division title when New England's in the back seat in the third row right now. And the Jets, of course, are at the bottom, which I don't expect to change anytime soon. But I got Josh Allen. I'm giving him an A-. There's still some flaws there. He had a stretch of the season this year where he did not play well. There's maybe 3 or 4 games in a row where he just performed poorly. He still turns the ball over too much for my liking, but he's much improved. I think he's on his way to becoming a perennial Pro Bowl quarterback.
He's been doing fantastically. If he can keep what he's got this year, learn from it, and even if he's not as good next year or the year following that he is this year, as long as he keeps somewhere within that range, he'll be a starting quarterback for many years to come, assuming injuries don't bar him.
Oh, we're going to talk about injuries and potentially not being a starting quarterback. There's a guy we need to talk about. That man is Andy Dalton. So Dalton has stepped in Dallas for the injured Dak Prescott, although he himself got injured and then got stuck on the COVID list. He had his own little issues there for a little while. Now back in the driver's seat. He's not had a good year. I know Mike Gabasser is a very big fan of Andy Dalton. He's looked very bad this season. And it's not necessarily all his fault because the offensive line is so banged up right now that you can't really fault him for taking some of the sacks or throwing some of the interceptions because they've had so many replacement stars along the line. But you got an offense with Ezekiel Elliott, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper. You have to be doing better than what Andy Dalton's doing right now. And I'll just give you the stats here before we jump to your section here. He's 1-3 as a starter. 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a 77.5 passer rating. That to me, that's not very good.
Yeah, a 77.5 passer rating is absolute garbage. That is the moment where you're panicking, and a tied touchdowns to interception ratio is awful, and you're not even including. I wish they would include all turnovers in this, where they would just have a touchdowns to turnovers ratio, because you have more turnovers than touchdowns. Or even you could have it touchdown or scoring drives to turnovers would be another great potential stat there. But yeah, just the fact that that's 500 for him, where he's even on touchdowns and interceptions, is really telling. The completion percentage isn't really a concern. I think that's a reasonable completion percentage. But yeah, the rating is awful.
Yeah, so I just think Andy Dalton, by the way, when he was with Cincinnati, I think Andy Dalton was like a B+ caliber quarterback. I will admit that. He was a pretty good quarterback. Some years might have even been a top 10 quarterback. But now that he's in Dallas, I have to say I'm giving him a D. He's not looked good this year. He's not taking advantage of all the pieces around him. And again, some of that is coaching, Mike McCarthy, and some of that's the offensive line. But certainly you can put some of this on the quarterback as well. I think Dalton's deserving of at least, well, not at least. I think you could give him a C. I could justify giving him a C- potentially, but I'm giving him a D instead.
I'm giving him a D-. I'm being a little bit more harsh. He does definitely have weapons he can work with, and he's just not utilizing them.
All right, well, speaking of something entirely different, someone who's got weapons, but someone who is utilizing them right now. Your man, Kirk Cousins, who you thought was a top 5 quarterback going into the year.
Top six.
Sorry, top 6. I keep forgetting. Top 6 quarterback going into the year. He came out, absolutely struggled, was towards the bottom of the NFL in my quarterback power rankings for the first, I want to say, like 5 weeks of the year. But he's really starting to turn it around. He's really starting to look like a top 10 quarterback again.
Yeah, I think I think Kirk Cousins is definitely a good quarterback, but it's a little confusing as to how good. Because you get these stretches of absolute garbage, but then you get flashes of greatness also. So maybe at the end of the day, overall, for his career, you could give him maybe a B, but I'm not exactly sure. It's a little confusing when it comes to Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I'm just going to give you the numbers. For the past 5 games, Kirk Cousins has thrown 12 touchdowns to 1 interception, is at 124.3 passer rating, and is completing 72% of his passes. That's in the past 5 games. So really, he's turned the season around for him and the Vikings. He's currently 5-6 right now. I think they'll be even better. They might be at 800 by the end of the year. And for the season, he's completing 68% of his passes, 2,700 yards, 23 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, a 104.5 passer rating. He's really pulled this year back from catastrophe. I don't know if it'll be enough to save Mike Zimmer's job, but I think Kirk Cousins deserves an A for the year despite the awful start because he really has turned things around.
He's done very well. It's surprising. I give him an A minus, but I think when it comes to this, that kind of a turnaround is not something I think you would expect from Kirk Cousins. Pardon me, I got something in my throat.
No, it's all good. It's all right. Don't worry about it. But I think, yeah, Kirk Cousins has really surprised me here. I did not kind of expect this full-fledged turnaround in the midseason for him. But he somehow managed to pull it off, so all the credit to him. He's working with a bunch of pieces in Dalton Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. He's got weapons there, and he certainly has learned how to use them. And we're going to move on to our next quarterback. We only have 3 more, and then we'll get to the rest of the segments of the show. But the next quarterback is someone I'm interested to talk about, former Minnesota Viking, Teddy Bridgewater. Now, Bridgewater, of course, had that horrific knee injury a couple of years ago, but then came in the Saints last year when Drew Brees was out, went 5-0, got a starting job with the Carolina Panthers. And you know what? The numbers don't look great. The statistics, the raw statistics don't look fantastic. Look very similar to a couple of quarterbacks we're going to talk about a little later. But to me, I really enjoy what I see from Teddy Bridgewater on the field. And I think he's transitioned into a top 10 to top 15 quarterback in the NFL.
Here's what I see Teddy Bridgewater as. Decent, serviceable, competent. He's not going to flash. He's not going to be like, wow, you're like a top 5 guy. You're not going to think that when you see Teddy Bridgewater. But if you want a serviceable quarterback, this is your guy. And that's most of the NFL. The best you can shoot for in a normal day is just a serviceable quarterback. So you got to give this guy some credit.
Yeah, and this season he's playing over 70% of his pass attempts, 2,800 yards, 14 touchdowns. He does have 8 interceptions, which is a little concerning for me. Although if you look in the past, his interception totals usually aren't that high. I think those numbers are a little bit inflated because he's the first time with the new system. You're missing Christian McCaffrey. You played some good defenses this year in Chicago and Tampa Bay. You can get Tampa Bay twice, by the way, and you get the Saints as well. So to me, the interception totals are not too concerning just because of the teams he's played against, because he's new to the system. He's his first year here, and there was a short offseason. He's got a 96.3 passer rating. To me, I like Teddy Bridgewater a lot. I like what he's done this year. I'm giving him a B+.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with you there. B+ is deserving. And you're right. I mean, playing the Saints twice and then Tampa Bay twice, Chicago, these are all great defenses. So the fact that the interceptions are as high as they are, I wouldn't be too concerned. And also, again, missing Christian McCaffrey, they might be 1 less or so if he had McCaffrey and more weapons to throw to in that sense. And obviously just give the ball 2 runs also.
All right, 2 more quarterbacks to go, and this guy does not have a terrific running back behind him. He does have a former terrific running back behind him, though. It's Matt Ryan with the Atlanta Falcons. And you know what? Matt Ryan, to me, is a very polarizing quarterback because I think at his peak, this guy's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but he hasn't hit it the past 2 years in a row now.
Yeah.
I think he had a highly underrated season. In what year was it? It was 2018. I think that year was highly underrated. It was very close to his MVP season. He didn't even make the Pro Bowl, which I think was criminal. But last year, decent season, but not fantastic. This year, arguably even worse. So to me, he's turning towards the middle of the pack in quarterbacks. I don't know if it's because he's getting older. He's 35. Is it regression? Or is it just that, they changed the head coach. There were problems with the play calling. I have no idea what's going on with Matt Ryan right now. I still like him as a quarterback, but I think this year has definitely been a disappointment for him.
It's Tampa Bay the Falcons as a whole have kind of melted down since their Super Bowl loss. And I can kind of see them in a sense as a 1-year wonder in that sense. Matt Ryan is still a great talent, but that team is not going back to the Super Bowl in his career. No. It's unfortunate just to have been like the team that got embarrassed by such an event, but that can really crush a team if done properly and if their mentality isn't right. So that's just unfortunate for him. He hasn't been great. I personally give him a B-, but I wouldn't rule Matt Ryan out. He's still a good quarterback. I think he'll still be in the league for at least a few more years. So I wouldn't bash on him too much, but yeah, this hasn't been a great year for him.
Yeah, this guy could play in the NFL till he's 40. I don't think this is any sign of him potentially falling out of the league. This kind of production that he's having right now, get him starting job in a lot of places in the NFL. But I still think this is below what I would expect from him, which is why I'm giving him a B- as well. Ordinarily, I would say if you ask me just a great quarterback based on talent, I think that I would give him an A-, but because the production hasn't been there this year, I'm going with a B- instead. And speaking of quarterbacks that have not had the production this year despite having the talent, Matthew Stafford is our final entry here.
This one hurts me because usually he's better than this too.
Oh, he was fantastic last year.
I wonder how much of this is coaching and how much of this is like just Matt Patricia, or was Matt Patricia. Thank goodness we got him out. But again, my hope here is the absolute best case scenario is that he ends up going to the Saints after Drew Brees potentially retires this year.
Yeah, Stafford, here's the issue, though. He had, in 8 games last year, 19 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. That was in 8 games. This year, in 11 games, he has 18 touchdowns, so fewer passing touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. More interceptions they did in 8 games last year. He went from having a 106 passer rating in 2019 to 92.7 this year. He was throwing for 312 yards per game last year. He's only throwing for 261 this year. He ended up dropping off by about 50 passing yards per game. A part of it is because Kenny Gallay's been injured. Marvin Jones has regressed. You really don't have a running game still. The offensive line's gotten a little better, but you see so many flaws offensively. I can't blame it all on Matt Stafford, but at the same point, and he's also dealing with thumb injury, by the way, which has held him back the past couple of weeks. But at the same point, I have high expectations for this dude, especially after we did last year when he was a top 10 quarterback for every week he played in.
You have to remember he's on. I'm sorry, I just got to stop you right there. You got to remember what team he's on. He's on the literal cancer, the Lions. So I wouldn't ever expect like A+ or like necessarily A grade from him. A- is a potential, but with that kind of a team, you go there to die. If you're playing in Detroit and you're going there long term, ask Barry Sanders, ask Calvin Johnson. You go there to die. Calvin Johnson, by the way, never won a playoff game, yet is one of the greatest receivers of all time. That just kind of says something about the organization. This is kind of why I want Matthew Stafford to go somewhere else. I wonder how many of the other teams that realize that their team is cancer just kind of want the good players to succeed somewhere else because you like them. Matt Stafford is definitely one of those. I feel like he's been underrated at times. I'm giving him a B here.
Yeah, you and I, this is probably the biggest difference you and I have had on a quarterback. It's purely based on how he's performed this year for me. I'm not holding a grudge against him for past seasons. This is just based on this year. He has not lived up to par, or not lived up to my expectations. Maybe a little too high for him, but he has not reached that point. Now, I do want to share briefly here. Here's a Word document that has all our rankings here, so you can just see them. I know it's a split screen, so you can't really see everything, but this is our numbers. These are what we rank. So you want to go back and just actually see them all just on the screen at one time. Here's an opportunity to pause the video or pause the live show and read down the numbers in case you missed our past grades for quarterbacks. And your opportunity is going 3, 2, 1, and it's gone forever. All right, so now let's talk some very brief NFL news. And we'll get onto other content here in a second. We'll get past the NFL in a moment, but some NFL news here, just really brief to run through. The Steelers remain undefeated after a sloppy Wednesday afternoon game against Baltimore. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. They're going to beat Washington on Monday. I'm not worried, but I am a little worried. I'll admit that. Beating Baltimore the way they did was definitely nerve-wracking, but this is what Pittsburgh does. This is what Baltimore does. They always have these close games, even if they shouldn't be. I'm not shocked that it was a one-score game. I'm not shocked it came down to the wire. And frankly, I'm not extremely worried because of that game alone. It was just a snake-bitten game to begin with. I'm more upset with Bud Dupree tearing his ACL and now being out for the year than the game being close. And really, I'm not worried about the long-term effects.
What do you think about the first down calls?
What was that?
I said, what do you think about the ball placement first down calls?
Bro, that's so – I mean, look, there was a call earlier on Sunday where the ball was clearly past the line, and they said no. They said no first down. And then they show a line. They show a angle where the ball was clearly short of the first down marker during the game against Baltimore. And I thought there was no way he got that first down. I'll admit that. I thought there was no way in hell he got that first down. But you know what? Maybe because the angle was just like not straight to the line, maybe the nose was right there. I don't know. But to me, it didn't look like he got the first down whatsoever. I was shocked when they said it was first down. But you know what? Sometimes you just get a lucky break and you got to roll with it.
Okay. All right.
But, other NFL news. Daniel Jones is unlikely to play this week. You get Colt McCoy starting for the New York Giants. And Tua Tagovailoa has a thumb injury. He's also unlikely to play. You'll probably get Ryan Fitzpatrick for the Miami Dolphins. That's about all for NFL news.
Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick, quite possibly the best backup quarterback in all the NFL, so I wouldn't be too upset.
No, I wouldn't be worried about it either. Ryan Fitzpatrick, when he's hot, he's hot. When he's cold, he'll throw 5 interceptions a game. But you really got to hope that he's hot, and if he is, you'll be in a good spot. But we're finally getting past our NFL segment here.
Okay.
And NHL news and rankings. Let's
NA
hear it, McGinnis.
rankings. I'm going to get to the news real quick because it's real quick, real easy. I have now heard of a new potential start date, which is January 15th, and then they're thinking about 50-something games. If that actually goes through, I would be semi-upset because I want it as early as possible. But at the same time, you got to do what works, and the NHL is just kind of in a spot at the moment. But your new look is currently January 15th, but they don't know where it's actually going to end up. We're going to talk more about these new divisions that we're running through. And I actually give the Blue Jackets a little bit of a better favor in this one. But let's start it out. So this is kind of like an East Central division kind of an idea if you're looking at the actual United States of where all these teams are. And I think at the top, I got to put Tampa Bay Lightning just because the sake of unless they were in a division with the Boston Bruins, I don't think I couldn't put them at the top of whatever division they were in because that's the only team I could see outdoing them in wins.
Yeah, so you're losing the Lightning at the very top here. So is this a top-heavy hypothetical division then? Because you got those two up there, and those teams were, Lightning came in second in the Atlantic Division, but like you said, it's because the Bruins were there. The Blues came in first in the Central Division this past year. So it certainly seems like there's a lot of top-heaviness here with these top two contenders. And once you get past that, the Blue Jackets you have in third, they were fifth within the Metropolitan Division last year. Now, granted, that's a very competitive division. But certainly it seems like the top two teams here are head and shoulders above the other ones right now.
So, yeah, here's my thing. The St. Louis Blues, there might be a little bit of concern here. Looking at Jordan Binnington during the playoffs, it was weird. So Jordan Binnington leads you to a Stanley Cup season. He's doing great. Playoffs, holy crap, who is this guy? He died. If that is the same case, the Blues might be in a spot. Jake Allen played actually really well, which isn't normal for him in the past years. So whatever there. But yeah, Jordan Binnington fell off a cliff. The Blues have talent, but that was concerning. If he stays on that, the Blues might be in a spot where they have to actually put Jake Allen back to the starting spot after getting benched for Jordan Binnington just 2 years ago. So that's an interesting one. I think Tampa Bay definitely takes this division. I don't see the Blues, unless maybe Jordan Binnington is better, but even then it's not plausible. I don't think there's a team in this whole division that is. I am going to put the Blue Jackets at number 3, though. The Blue Jackets, again, they've got fantastic goaltending. They got Korpisalo. They've got Merzlikins. They've got good goaltending. They've got great defense. You got Seth Jones, who should be a Norris Trophy contender again. For those of you who don't know, that's basically best defenseman in the NHL. So they've got great defense. And they just acquired another offensive piece. So their offensive is garbage. Hopefully they can figure that out for their sake. But I think they can do better in a weaker division here.
All right. Can I inject in there for a second? You have, as you already said, Tampa Bay Lightning 1, St. Louis Blues 2, Columbus Blue Jackets 3. Your number 4 is the Carolina Hurricanes. And if I'm looking at the standings from last year, the Hurricanes finished with 5 games over the Blue Jackets in the Metropolitan Division. What's making you flip that? What do you think makes you think that those 5 games will flip to the Blue Jackets this year and will put the Carolina Hurricanes down at 4 and Columbus ahead of them?
So here's one thing to consider. The Blue Jackets, especially last year, beat Carolina at least 3 times out of the 4 or 5 games they played. So the Blue Jackets kind of have Carolina's number. 2, Carolina was a bit erratic last year, along with most of the rest of that division, including the Blue Jackets. Carolina is definitely a more complete team, I would say, because they actually have an offense that exists. But this might be more one of those things where you kind of have to put your gut ahead of it sometimes. It's not necessarily always going to play out the way the numbers should. But yeah, this is more of a gut move, I guess.
I totally understand that sometimes you just got to go with your gut, and you know what? It's usually right. So credit to you for putting the Blue Jackets 3, Hurricanes at 4. Let's get into the rest of your rankings. Who do you have at number 5?
I got to put the Florida Panthers here. However, I will say, Bobrovsky, despite being absolute trash during the entirety of last season, during the playoffs, he turned it on. It was impressive. So Bobrovsky, for those of you who don't know, fantastic goaltender. He's won the Vezina Trophy, which is goalie MVP for the year, for the NHL. He moves from the Blue Jackets to Florida, which I thought was going to be super concerning. I thought the Blue Jackets were going to have like a goaltending issue. And then they were just like, no, our backups and our minor leaguers are now gods at the position, which surprised me because, Korpisalo was garbage before he got a starting spot. But yeah, he moves. He gets paid a crap ton of money. He sucks the whole season, and then he turns it on during the playoffs. Again, this is the same thing with Jordan Binnington. If he can keep that up, the Florida Panthers will be in a much better position. They also need to improve on defense. Their offense isn't an issue. Their offense is top 5. It's fantastic. Defense and goal
Go ahead.
are questions.
Yes, the offense is what got them to 35 wins, 26 losses last year. You go on from there. You go down to number 6, the Nashville Predators. So why do you have the Florida Panthers ahead of them? What separates the Panthers and the Predators right now?
Talent and what you can expect. I still don't trust Pecorine. I don't trust Saros now either, both their goaltenders, because neither of them can apparently perform in high-intensity situations, which is scary. So you don't have a goaltender that can perform in high-end situations. Like, they'll choke. That's what at least Pecorine will do and has proven he will do. And this team has so many – this team is a gigantic question mark with high-end skepticism from my part. They went from being a Stanley Cup contender to, well, we're going to drop out of the first round to, well, we're not even going to make the playoffs. We're going to lose in the qualifiers now. They just kind of seem like they're in a bit of a stall, spiraling downwards toward the ground, and they're about to explode.
You paint a very vivid picture there, McGinnis.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot. They need to do something quick.
All right, well, they're in a tough spot, and they're in a rough situation there where they're spiraling down and about ready to explode. What's going on with the Chicago Blackhawks and Detroit Red Wings? So you have it 7-8. What puts them down that low if they're below spiraling and exploding?
So I don't know why the Chicago Blackhawks decided they needed to rebuild, but I saw somewhere, I don't know if this is 100, if this is accurate, but they might be in kind of a rebuild mode right now. Now they've got fantastic young talent. Like, for instance, Dominik Kubalik, who had 5 points in a single NHL playoff game, which I think is the record, if I'm not mistaken. Or at least it was some sort of record. I don't remember exactly. But so fantastic young talent. You've got experience in Kane and Taves, who are also fantastic players. You had Robin Lehner. Sure, you had issues. But if you started making a few moves, you might have been in a spot to be able to start coming back. But then you let Lehner go, and your goaltending is now a question of who the heck is the goaltender. If you can't trust goaltending on a team, it's hard for me to put them higher up. That's what my big knock on the Florida Panthers was when Bobrovsky was struggling. You got to have goaltending in the NHL. It's just you can't live without it.
And then finally, the snake-bitten city of Detroit, the Red Wings at the very bottom here. And I'm looking back at the NHL standings from last year. 71 games played, 17 wins, 49 losses. I think it's pretty obvious why they're down here at the bottom.
So here's the thing. I love the fact that we actually got a goaltender that is competent in Thomas Greiss. Fantastic. We still suck. Okay? Our entire team, minus maybe now a starting goaltender, still needs a revamp. And get this, Thomas Greiss will probably play badly, or at least you can expect that, because our defense is still garbage. It's hard to expect a goaltender to do well behind an awful defense. And going from like one of, if not the best defense to the worst defense, it's going to be a tough adjustment for Thomas Greiss. There's just almost not a position on this team where we could use an improvement. And we were by far, it wasn't even close, the worst team in the NHL last year. It won't be any different this year. We might be slightly improved, but it won't be any giant jump this year yet. Hopefully next year or the year following, Steve Yzerman will start breaking out and getting great free agents like Thomas Greiss and more of them. But that'll have to be in years to come.
All right. Any more NHL news you want to talk about? Anything other topics you want to cover?
So for the NHL, that's about it. Just it'll be interesting to see how these divisions play out. If you're on with us next week, we will be talking about a division that has the Bruins, the Capitals, the Flyers, and the Penguins in the same division. So if you like the Metropolitan Division, this is also either of that par or worse. So if you like divisions of absolute murder, Yeah, come next week for that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Make sure we get that next week. Make sure to check back next week at Friday at 9:30. That's when we have our shows every week. But we're getting now into my area of the woods, NBA news. We got something to talk about here. So the NBA has released our schedule. Today it's a 72-game schedule, so dropping down from 82 games to 72. They released the first half today. Just to let players know what they're in for. People know what they're in for. Preseason starts December 11th, and regular season games start December 22nd. So it's looking like the NBA is getting underway. I don't know how the COVID protocols are going to work this year because I'm not doing a bubble, so I don't know how it's going to work out, how it's going to play out yet. We'll find out as we go along. I have a feeling they're going to have to make some stuff up along the way. But other big news, the Celtics traded Gordon Hayward to the Hornets. He signed a 4-year deal, $120 million extension with them. LeBron signed a 2-year, $85 million deal to stay with the Lakers. And Anthony Davis re-signed with the Lakers for 5 years, $190 million. So now those two guys are signed there for the next 3 to 4 years at the very least together.
Chasing rings.
Exactly. Well, they were already there, though. So it's not like they were joining up together. Not like they were building a super team or something like that. They were already there. And now they get a chance to maybe repeat. I think they're going to get, if I had to put a number on it, they've already won 1. I think they'll get 2 together. I think 3 will be pushing it, considering LeBron has not won more than 2 rings in any of his previous locations. So I think 2 rings in LA with Anthony Davis seems like the right amount for me. But the real big news this past week was the Rockets traded former MVP Russell Westbrook to the Washington Wizards for John Wall and a first-round pick.
And there goes the Rockets season.
Pretty much. I mean, John Wall, here's the thing. John Wall would be a better match for James Harden, though, because John Wall is more of a facilitator. He passes the ball a lot more, whereas Russell Westbrook is more of like a score-first type guard. So it's a little bit different. But at the same point, the Rockets have sold a lot of their pieces. I think the Rockets are going to – you talked about spiraling and crashing, right? Well, guess what? Meet the Houston Rockets. I mean, it's kind of what we're at.
If you're an NBA team and you get rid of your best player and he's one of those top 10 to top 20 players, you're pretty much screwed.
I wouldn't say that Westbrook was their best player. James Harden's their best player. I think they're trying to satisfy James Harden. The whole part of this deal is that they're hoping John Wall meshes well with James Harden, because Russell Westbrook didn't, even though they were former teammates in OKC. So, they're hoping to appease Harden, because Harden actually reportedly requested a trade this offseason. They're really hoping he sticks around, because without him, they have nothing. So they're trying to please him right now. And on the flip side, Washington has another superstar shooting guard in Bradley Beal, who's in the final year of his deal. They want to sign him to extension. They don't want to lose him in free agency, but they probably will. And they brought Russell Westbrook in to hopefully to appease him. Basically, these are 2 teams. They're on the brink of falling apart. They're trying to appease their superstars by making trades for other star players. And you know what? None of it's going to work. They're all going to fail, and it's going to be fantastic.
If you had to pick one of those teams to somehow be successful and make up, which one would it be, though?
Has to be the Rockets. Absolutely. The Wizards they have not been relevant since John Wall and Bradley Beal were healthy together, which is 3 or 4 years ago at this point. The Rockets have still managed to be relevant for the past, I will say, 7 to 8 years since James Harden got there. I think as long as they have Harden, they're going to be a relevant team. I can't say the same thing for the Wizards with Beal, because Beal has not played winning basketball recently. You know what? Neither has Russell Westbrook. So to me, I think it's going to be the Rockets if anyone. But they have a first-year head coach, a first-year general manager, so I really can't say for sure. It's going to be a bit of a toss-up here, but it's going to be fun to watch.
We'll see. All right.
So that brings us to our final segment of our show, and possibly my favorite segment, Thinking or Dreaming. We have some real doozies this week, so McGinnis, do you want to start, or should I start this time?
Why don't you start? All
right, McGinnis, here we go. If you were trying to salvage a quarterback and rebuild a franchise, would you rather have Carson Wentz or Baker Mayfield? I'm saying I'd rather have Carson Wentz, but am I thinking or am I dreaming?
I'm not really sure there's a right answer, but if I had to pick, I think I would end up having to go with Carson Wentz. So I think that's thinking. I think Baker Mayfield could potentially be better if he was on a different team. The Browns are still the Browns. They're just not losing as much. The Brown thing is still there. It's just not as bad.
It's still the city of Cleveland, and it's still the Browns. So technically, nothing has changed. But
yeah, I think I'd have to go with Carson Wentz just because he has had success. You got to give him at least a bit of credit for what he's done already. You could definitely salvage a team. First thing maybe you'd have to do though is salvage his brain, because his brain is pretty much wrecked.
Yeah, and with all the hits he's taken, you never know. But really, all right, let's hear yours. Give me one, McGinnis.
All right. Let's throw this one in. Andy Dalton will never have a starting job again. I think this is probably being a little harsh, but let's hear it from
No,
you.
it's being a little harsh. I agree with you there. But you're thinking because look at the quarterbacks. Let me say it this way. I'm going to pull up the NFL standings right now. Of course, there are quarterbacks that get injured every year. So Dalton will probably go to a team next year where Hill will start 1 or 2 games during the season because someone else gets hurt. That's just how the NFL works. You get hit a lot. Quarterbacks get hurt. But if you look at the standings right now, I can only say that there are 6 or 7 teams that will need quarterbacks this year. But some of those guys are going to come internally. Some of those guys, like a Sam Darnold, might get a shot at a starting job. A Gardner Minshew might get a shot at a starting job somewhere else other than Jacksonville. So there's going to be Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston might get a shot at a starting job. So there's going to be some internal movement here. And they're going to be up to as many as 5 or 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round this coming year at the NFL draft. We're looking at Trevor Lawrence from Clemson, Justin Fields from Ohio State, Trey Lance from North Dakota State, potentially Zach Wilson from BYU, Kyle Trask potentially from Florida, maybe Mac Jones from Alabama. So you're looking at 5 or 6 guys who are going to go in the first round to upper second round. And, that's a lot of starting jobs getting eaten up there by rookies. And we've seen the past couple of years, a lot of rookies come in and taking over those starting gigs. So I think Andy Dalton will probably be a long-term backup in the NFL from here on out.
Yeah, unfortunate for him because he's not an incompetent quarterback.
No, he isn't. He probably deserves a starting job. There just might not be one. All right, here's mine for you. The Detroit Lions waited a year too long to fire Matt Patricia.
They should have never hired him. So, yeah, this is thinking. They should have. Honestly, I think I saw it. Jim Caldwell is like 36-28 when he was under coaching for the Lions. Firing him, the worst option ever. We were the definition of mediocre 500, kind of, sort of, maybe kind of a team. And that was beyond frustrating. But if you don't have an option that's better that you can get a hold of, don't fire him. So, yeah. Patricia was an awful decision. I have a feeling the next one won't be any better. Just for the sake of the only people we'll be able to get is like assistant coaches for real coaches.
Apparently, some kind of legislator, some kind of the politicians in Detroit are trying to get I don't know, they're doing something where they're signing a petition to ask for Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, to be the next head coach of the Detroit Lions or something like that. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know exactly what it is.
Why?
It's
what difference?
It's a thing that's happening. I don't know why. Politicians are weird people, man.
I think we can just stop it. People are weird.
Yeah, that's true. But right. Matt Patricia, I think we both agree should never have been a hire. But hit me with your next one.
I'm gonna adjust this a little bit.
All right.
If Matthew Stafford comes in for Drew Brees and we do get that absolute fantastic, my perfect scenario, he'll be a top 7 quarterback in the NFL.
All right, so here's my thought process with that. I don't know if that's likely going to happen because Drew Brees does have another year on his contract, but let's say for the sake of it that it does happen. I agree with you. I think Matt Stafford, if he goes to New Orleans with Sean Payton, will be a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. Because right now, if I'm being honest, there's maybe 4 quarterbacks in the NFL that I consider elite. I consider Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson elite quarterbacks. Those are the 4. I'd think about that for a second. I know there's 4. I just have to remember their names, but those are the 4 ones that I think are elite.
Holy Rick Anthony Davis. That's not right.
What happened?
Sorry, I just saw a comment real quick. I do see these, by the way. Trubisky is not better than Mahomes. I'm sorry, he's just not.
Oh, okay. I haven't looked at the chat for a while, actually. Yeah, you're right. There's some people in here. Anthony Davis says Trubisky is better than Mahomes. Anthony Davis, Trubisky's yeah. All right, so this is someone spamming being a troll in the chat, but Anthony Davis, you sound like a basketball player to me. And so I'm going to tell you, you might want to stick to giving basketball takes. No, if that's not meant to be any offensive to you, but Mahomes wishes he would have Mahomes. Well, he is Mahomes, so maybe you don't have to worry about that. Maybe you mistyped that, but
sorry,
Anthony Davis, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on the show, but
yeah,
please stop doing this. Let's be realistic here. Let's be realistic. All right. So your take about Stafford being a top 7 quarterback, I totally agree with you there. You'll have Emmanuel Sanders, you'll have Alvin Kamara, he'll have a terrific offensive line, which is one of the best in football, and he'll have a healthy, hopefully healthy, Michael Thomas, along with Jared Cook at tight end, Sean Payton at coach. I think he would be a top 7 quarterback. My only concern being that sometimes he might have like PTSD from Detroit and might force too many throws. Like it might just be ingrained in his head at this point to like try to be like hero ball. But really, I do think give him a dominant receiver like a Michael Thomas who can always get open. Guys like Emmanuel Sanders who can stretch the field. And of course, Alvin Kamara who can be a great receiver out of the backfield. And he will be a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. He has that talent. He's not a transcendent talent by any means, but he's got the talent to elevate to a top 7 level when he has the pieces around him.
But yeah, Anthony Davis continues to say, in all seriousness, I'm in pain as a Bears fan. That is perfectly legit. Bears fans are in pain right now.
He wants Zach Wilson. You know what? Zach Wilson might not be that bad. Let me look at the stakes. Zach Wilson is the current quarterback, for BYU. He's a Heisman candidate. He's really improved his stock. Probably improved his stock more than anyone in college football this year. He's a versatile quarterback. I actually like him quite a bit. I've seen him be like the 3rd quarterback taken in the draft in some mocks. I've seen him be the 4th quarterback taken. I think at this point it's a consensus that he's going to be taken in the first round. 26 touchdowns, 2 interceptions this year in 9 games. For Chicago, it's not out of reach because Chicago is right now. Let me pull up the record. I think they are 5-6, but I could be wrong. They're 5-6 right now.
Yeah, 5-6 is right.
Yeah, so they're going to have teams ahead of them. Like they're going to have Atlanta, Carolina's going to be ahead of them. All the teams in the NFC East are going to be ahead of them. So they're going to have to wait a little while. New York Jets, obviously, the Chargers are going to be there. The Bengals, the Jaguars. So they're going to have to wait. If you want Zach Wilson, you might have to trade up to get him. He also said, I would not mind Matt Ryan, but I think he might die behind with our own line. Yeah, Matt Ryan has no mobility. So really, if you're a statue, I think you would have to suffer with one of those teams that doesn't have much of an offensive line. So I agree with you there. Matt Ryan would be a great pickup, don't get me wrong, but I think not necessarily that best fit with the way the offense is going right now. He would make Allen Robinson look really good, though, because Allen Robinson is a really good receiver. That would be a great pairing for him. But I think if you're going to get Zach Wilson, you will probably have to trade up a few spots. And you know what happened last time the Bears traded for a quarterback? It was Mitch Trubisky. So I don't know if you want to make that move again just because of what's happened in the past. But
hey,
I do think
from Josh Rosen to Kyler Murray.
Yeah, Can we trade Robert Quinn? I don't think you can with the kind of contract he's on. He's got a big contract. He's not producing very much. He was really good in the role they had him playing in Dallas, but he hasn't really done much for Khalil Mack this year. Khalil Mack's kind of been average the past 2 seasons, and then Robert Quinn just isn't producing this year. I haven't heard his name called in quite a bit. So I think getting rid of Robert Quinn would probably be a good move for the cap. I don't think it's going to happen just because of the amount of money tied up in an edging player like him. So, sorry, Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I think that's all for the show though, because we've been at this for more than an hour, which is by far.
Yeah, I apologize for that. The quarterback rankings took much longer than I expected.
I don't mind it being that long. Like we had a good show. This is probably the best show we've done. So it wasn't. We're fine. It's been a while.
Yeah, no, I agree too. I'm at 48%. This ate up like 52% of my battery here in my computer. But all right, so we're gonna sign off here. But I have to remind you that we're sponsored by Manscaped. And I've seen, to be fair, I've seen a lot of small networks, a lot of small podcasts that are sponsored by Manscaped recently because I've been looking around. So I feel less bad that we're not the only ones doing these reads or doing these commercials here at the end of these videos. So I feel a little bit better about it. But
it's his job. It's part of his job because
it is part of my job. It's part of my internship here. I have to tell you about Manscaped and about the Lawnmower 3.0 and about the perfect package for your package.
Wow.
I can never. Hey, no, that's not me. I'm not making that up. I'm not making that. That's actually part of the company's script for the commercials and stuff. Is actually part of the company's script. But anyways, Manscaped supports the show. It helps us out and keep us going. And if you go to manscaped.com, use promo code TGG20. It helps us out quite a bit. You get 20% off your first order and free shipping. I don't think you want to give anyone Manscaped for the holidays, but you know what? Maybe you're the kind of person who does. So, or maybe you're the kind of person who needs it. So why not treat yourself? Go to manscaped.com. Use promo code TGG20. McGinnis is turning bright red. I can see it, even though his baseball cap on. We're going to end the show here. We appreciate you guys listening. And remember, come back next week, Friday, same time, 9:30 p.m. We'll be here. More sports talk from around the sports world. We appreciate you guys listening. And you've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where legends speak. See you all next week.